Hello everyone, in this video I'll be showing you the best Gale build guide for in Baldur's Gate 3. Now Gale is our favorite wizard, so we're going to keep him as a wizard. And what he does best is damage and utility, as a wizard's got a lot of different spells and the ability to swap spells out on the fly. So I'm going to go over all the gear options as well to give yourself a very powerful Gale. And for cantrips, I do think that Minor Illusion is really great for grouping enemies together, but also if you have a thief in your party, you can use it to distract enemies and then steal from them, so it's quite useful for inside and outside of combat. And I do think that Shocking Grasp and Ray of Frost are the best cantrips. The reason being is you can double the damage with water, so it takes them above the other cantrips here. Firebolt is really nice for utility as well, so you could just skip out on Ray and Frost and grab Firebolt at level 1, or you can grab it at a future level. And we also got a bunch of options for spells, and there's some that I think are essential, so I'm going to clear them all off and talk about some. So Shield being one of the most effective early game and even late game. This increases your armor class by 5, it uses a level 1 spell, and it can stop the magic missile damage. So this is going to overall help with your survivability. It's a definite skill that you want to have equipped pretty much at all times. Next, we're going to go with Chromatic Orb. This can be changed to any damage type, and it deals a good amount of damage. It's originally supposed to be thunder damage, but we can make this cold or lightning damage, and that'll deal double with the Create Water, so we want that as well. Ice Knife is another really nice one, as I mentioned. Water damage is huge in Baldur's Gate 3, more so than in Dungeons & Dragons, because we're able to set up water pretty frequently and easily, even outside of combat, as you can use Create Water and it won't trigger aggro on anyone. So Magic Missile, obviously the GOAT wizard spell, we want to take that as well. And I think for utility purposes, like Sleep's pretty good early on in the game. I don't normally take it, but it shuts down, you can shut down 24 combined hit points of damage, so it is actually quite a good spell, not used often. I'm a big fan of Find Familiar. The reason being, having an extra body to spread aggro routine is really nice. And then I also think that Thunderwave with the pushback can have some utility. Mage Armor, if you don't have good armor choices, it's pretty decent to go with Mage Armor. You can go with Mage Armor or Thunderwave for your spell there. And then for our ability scores, this is where it gets kind of interesting, because we can go a variety of different ways here. So I think it's okay to dump your Charisma and dump your Strength, because they're not as useful for a wizard. We want obviously our intelligence to be as high as we can possibly get it. 17 is nice, and since this is Gale, he doesn't get the hag's hair, so that does kind of complicate things a little bit. So you could take it down and have these both at 16, and then have your dexterity pumped up as high as you can possibly get dexterity. We want to have our constitution high as well. That's just for overall survivability's sake. Dexterity at 15, I don't love to leave things on an odd number there, but we're going to go with that there. And the reason being is if we can get that up to 16, that's going to increase our armor class, which is quite nice to have. You can go with either way here if you want higher dexterity or higher constitution. Actually, for the purposes, I'll keep my dexterity a little bit higher, and there's items later on in the game that can increase your constitution, which I'll get into, which do help out quite a bit. Now, I'll go over to gear options at the end here, but I'm going to go through the full build guide with you for Gale as a wizard. So there's a few different types of a few different subclasses that we can go with. Divination is one of my favorites. You get Portent Dice, which allows you to change the outcome of battle. I'll get into that in a different video. It's very effective, but Necromancy is my second favorite, but Evocation is kind of the one to go to for Gale. The reason being, you get Sculpt spells, so you create little pockets of safety. If you're casting a fireball and your teammates are in there, they're going to be safe from the fireball. So that's really nice, because there's a lot of damaging effects from wizards that can hit a lot of enemies, and your teammates included. Now, for our extra spells we're going to take, I like Thunderwave for the pushback and Longstrider. Longstrider is a ritual. You can cast this on your fighter, and they'll have an increased 3 meters movement speed until you long rest, which is very useful, as movement is kind of everything in Baldur's Gate 3. And for our prepared spells, we're going to take off Web there. We get our level 3s too. But we're going to go with Shield, Chromatic Orb, Ice Knife, Magic Missile, and then you can choose a damage spell if you want, or Find Familiar. I like Find Familiar. It's nice to be able to spread out aggro. You're likely going to be using Magic Missile for most of your damage alongside cantrips early in the game, so having an extra familiar is helpful. So we'll go with that there. Now, I'll move the camera a little bit. For level 2, we get some more spells at level 2, and I do think that Scorching Ray is one of the better ones here. It's just up, you can upcast it, it deals a good amount of fire damage. Cloud of Daggers for concentration is pretty good, because it's going to do, you can put this in a doorway and enemies are going to run through it. But I would also recommend Misty Step as a bonus action to teleport around, because this gives you mobility, which is huge for a wizard. But I like Cloud of Daggers, so you can choose either of those two there. And we do get more spell slots at this level, so that's quite nice. And then you can take whatever spell that you want here. Flaming Sphere is pretty nice too as a concentration, but it creates something like a familiar. You move the ball around and explode it. Pretty nice. For our next level, level 4, this is where we get another cantrip, so take Firebolt if you missed it or whatever one you didn't take previously. For our level 2 spells, Misty Step is fantastic, and then you can go with something like Detect Thoughts, which can be pretty useful if, not on Gale, but more so for your party. Enlarge or Reduce can be pretty good as well as a different option. I also like Fog Cloud. Just crowd control early on in the game is quite useful. I like Sleep is a good one, or Fog Cloud, so you can go with either of those two. Grease is also another good option. It sets up difficult terrain, knocks creatures prone, and doubles damage to fire, so that can be good as well. For our prepared spells, we're going to take Hold Person or Cloud of Daggers. I really like Hold Person. As a concentration, it's going to hold a person, and you can upcast this later on. This stops an enemy from moving around and attacking, and it also allows you to just wail on them with critical hits. It's very effective. I don't see a lot of people talking about Hold Person on wizards, but it can be nice in a pinch to keep your whole team alive. For our ability, or for our feats, we're going to go with Ability Improvement. Take our intelligence up to 18, which will allow us to take another spell on our next level, so that's nice and useful. So level 5. We got level 3 spells now. There's a few standouts here. Actually, I think that the best for a wizard would be Counterspell. Shuts down an enemy trying to cast a spell. If you have your team grouped together and you see a wizard trying to cast Fireball, Counterspell will save your team. And on that same note, Fireball is great as well. I think that Fireball is a really powerful spell. Glyph of Warding also gets a shout out though, because you can change the type of damage. And it's like a Fireball. You set it in an area and it deals damage. You can put opponents to sleep with it. It's pretty great. Underrated for sure. So as I said, we got 2 extra spell slots here. So I would recommend going with Counterspell and Fireball. Haste can be great as well, but I prefer having a sorcerer that can twin haste to 2 people for one spell usage. I think that that's a little bit better, especially in combat. So if you have a sorcerer or 2, they can go with haste. And at a certain point, you can take off Find Familiar. We will have other options, so we'll leave it like that for now. And as we proceed into our next level, this is where level 6 we get ourselves another subclass feature, Potent Cantrip. Your cantrips become harder to evade. When a creature succeeds a saving throw against one of your cantrips, it still takes half damage and suffers no additional effects. So extra damage overall. It's great. His cantrips can be pretty useful at times. Glyph of Warding, Lightning Bolt. I do like Sleet Storm for upsetting concentration on spellcasters, but Lightning Bolt does damage in a line and can be doubled with water. I am huge on water, and Glyph of Warding can also use water, so we'll take off Web there, we'll put on Lightning Bolt, and you can take off Find Familiar if you're not using it and put on Glyph of Warding. We do have a lot of level 3 spells, but there's actually some gear that will replenish our spell slots, so it's fine. Next, we get level 4 spells. There's a few standouts here. I also like Ice Storm, sets up icy surfaces, can be good crowd control, and its damage. I also like Minor Elemental. Having different allies around to grab aggro from enemies can be very useful, so I think that those two kind of work together hand in hand, creating crowd control, but also having another ability to keep yourself alive. So for our level 2 spell, we're going to go with Conjure Elemental. You can take off one of the other options here if you're not using them as much and put on Ice Storm. I do like having Glyph of Warding active though, so we'll leave that for another level. But level 8, we get ourselves another feat, so that's pretty useful here. We'll pick another 2 spells. I like Wall of Fire. It's pretty good damage. It can crowd control, set up a wall, boom. There's also Ever's Black Tentacles there, difficult terrain, and smothers creatures. It can be pretty good, but I feel like that suits a Warlock better. Blight can be decent damage. Banish can banish the target, which takes them out of battle, which is really nice. I also think the Dimension Door is really useful, taking you and an ally. If you have another like caster that's kind of squishy and you want to take them out of the battle, or put them somewhere else, this can be done with Dimension Door. So for our spells, we're going to take Ice Storm there, and for our feat, this is a tough choice. We're going to take our intelligence up to 20. I think that just works best here, so we're going to go with that. Intelligence impacts your spell attack rolls, so you're more likely to hit with a higher intelligence. Level 5 spells, there's one that stands above a bunch of others, and that is Cone of Cold. This does 64 damage, and if the target is wet, that does 128 damage. 128, that's incredible at max. Conjure Elemental is also a really great spell to go with, so we can take off Conjure Minor Elemental. You can put that one back on and use both, but I do like the Earth Mirror, or the Earth Elemental at level 5 spell. And for the level 6 spell, the Water Myrmidon is pretty broken. I think that it's probably the best because the Water Myrmidon sets up water for you to do Cone of Cold, so it can deal crazy amounts of damage. Actually, we'll leave it like that. We took our increased intelligence, so we can cast another spell. So Conjure Elemental, Minor Elemental. There's actually 2 minor ice methods that you can cast, so you can do this to have 2 ice methods, which are going to double from the damage that your Water Myrmidon will cast. So that's pretty good. If you have a cleric, they can create water as well. And as I said, before a battle, you can create water, upcast it, cover the room, and then start blasting with Cone of Cold, and you'll take out the entire team pretty quickly. We do get another cantrip. Mage Hand can throw water bottles, so that's another option that we got for setting up water. But Bone Chill is nice too, as it stops healing. For our next level 5 spells, I like Hold Monster a lot because this can be used to stop some late game bosses from moving, and any attacks within 3 meters of criticals. Pretty good. Planar Binding is another good option. This allows you to control a otherworldly being, and it gets quite effective with that. Cloud Kill can be good too. We can reposition the cloud every turn. It's concentration, and if you have undead, it won't hurt your undead, which is really nice. So if you focus more on undead, go with Cloud Kill, but Planar Binding's pretty good too. So either one of those two. And then for our prepared spells, we're going to take Hold Monster, as these 2 crowd control spells are fantastic. We don't have that many other concentrations on this class, so feel free to start combat off by Hold Person. That just makes things a whole lot easier for the rest of your team. We also do get a subclass feature at level 10, Empowered Evocation. So your Grass Evocation magic has tightened. You can add your intelligence modifier to damage rolls with the evocation spells. So that's pretty nice, because that's going to add our +5 to our evocation spells. And if you don't know, Magic Missile. Upcast, it gets extra damage. That gets pretty broken. There's also gear that we can use to add an additional Magic Missile, and that's just going to deal additional 5 damage, and these don't miss, so pretty good. There's only a few other evocation, like Chromatic Orb, Scorching Ray, Fireball, so all these are going to get increased damage, which is nice. Actually, quite a few of the spells are evocation, so yeah, all these are going to get a nice little damage boost, so that is the best part about level 10 Wizard, is you get all of that. Now, as we go into our level 11, this is where we get level 6 spells. Chain Lightning, far and beyond the best. I'm also a big fan of Globe of Invulnerability. And Odaluk's Freezing Spear is pretty great as well. Create a ball of churning ice and be launched instantly. Create a Frosty Explosion or stored for later. It's good, but I think Cone of Cold's a little bit better. Wall of Ice is really not that amazing. Compared to Wall of Fire, it's not going to deal as much damage. And yeah, I think that there's some better options there, so we're not going to go with Wall of Ice, even though I am focusing more on like the ice damage spells. I think Cone of Cold is just underrated for sure. Global Invulnerability creates immunity to all targets within it. Super huge. It can actually make some fights a whole lot easier. So we're going to take that for our level 6 spell, and then if you want, you can also take off one of the earlier spells that you don't find yourself using as much. So if you're not big on Ice Knife, you can take that off and put on Globe of Invulnerability. And then we're going to get one more level of Wizard. But there's a couple options that we can go with. If you want, you can add in the Cleric, and you can go with either the Tempest, which will give us heavy armor, or it really just depends, I guess, what you want. I think that the Tempest is decent because it's going to give you heavy armor. We don't have to add in another class, though. That's not something that's super necessary, but even adding in Fighter for the armor, or Cleric could probably be the best bet if you're going to add it in any level of anything. But yeah, well, the benefit of adding in an extra class is you get all the benefits of their level 1, and if they have armor, it gives you their armor. So that's quite nice. For our final 2 spells, we're going to stick with Wizard, though, for the purposes of this, because it's just better to go full on the Wizard, because that's what Gale's all about. And there are some heavy armors that we can still wear, as I'll get into when we talk about gear. So Circle of Death is a good one, because that does a big area of effect damage, and I'll get into why that's really powerful in a moment. And then Eye Bite can be really nice, causes a creature to go to sleep. There's no check for this, so you just do it, and it puts them to sleep for 10 turns. Really powerful. Odaluk's Frozen Spear, though, I think that is a pretty underrated spell, so I'm going to go with that one just for the purposes of this build. And then for our spells that we're going to have, let's swap them out a little bit. We want Global Invulnerability, we want to have Chain Lightning, we want to have Cone of Cold, we want to have Hold Monster. Geez, this really did swap them out. I guess adding in the multi-class changed some things around. We want to have both of our Elementals. And yeah, I guess like that looks pretty good. Misty Step's nice to have for mobility. But that's going to be it for our spells. And then for our final feat, there's a couple things that we can go with. We can go with an ability improvement and take our dexterity up to 18. Just for survivability's sake. Gives us another armor class. But I do think that the best thing to do is actually go dual wielder. And you're going to see why. This doesn't sound very smart, but I'll show you. So, as we get into the build here, what this allows us to do is we want to end game in Act 3. You want to get the Marco Hesh gear here, which gives you a +1 to your spell save DC and attack rolls, but allows you to cast a spell for free. And then on top of that, we can also add the Staff of Spell Power to cast 2 spells for free. So that's crazy. 2 level 6 spells, super powerful. And then also this gives us Kareshka's Favor, which you can use the different versions of these, and they're going to give you different resistances to the damage, and then also you're going to deal additional damage equal to your proficiency bonus. And then let's say you use that, it's going to change the spear's look, and then it's going to give us 2 free charges of an attack. So with this allows us to do Lightning Bolt, and then another Chain Lightning. This is absolutely broken. And it's going to increase the lightning damage that we're dealing, so we're going to deal a lot of damage with it. And if you have water, create water from a cleric or someone else in your team, or your mage hand throwing water bottles, that'll deal upwards of 160 damage to everyone. So that gets pretty broken real quick. And as I mentioned, there's a really quick and easy way to set up water. You can cast the Water Myrmidon there, and then with that they have a Frozen Icicle there, and then they also have the Heimal Smash. So you can set up water with them, and then also they've got some healing too, which is kind of nice. But as you can see, we only have 75 health, so that makes things a little bit difficult. As we get into our gear, I think Hood of the Weave, +2 to spell save DC and spell attack rolls. That's very powerful. We're never missing our spells. Cloak of Displacement, when the beginner's turn begins, enemies have disadvantage on attack rolls, so this will just help with survivability for Gale. We're going with the Robe of the Weave, +1 to spell save DC and spell attack rolls. Weave Eater, whenever the wearer succeeds a saving throw against a spell, they regain 1 to 6 health, which is pretty nice, and then +2 to armor class. So with this setup, we have 17 armor class, and if we take off the agility, we're using the gauntlets, gloves of dexterity there. We could have dumped our dexterity, but if you put on the bracers of defense, that gives us 18 armor class with no shield and light armor, so that's actually pretty good. There's also like the quick spell gauntlets, or the where is it here? I have so many different pieces of gear between different classes. There's one that'll allow you to cast your spells at melee range without any disadvantages. Daredevil gloves, and then there's also ones that allow you to cast a cantrip as a bonus action, so those are pretty good too. I like the Space Hunt boots just for the Dimension Door, which is super useful to get around. Ring of Regeneration, 1 to 4 health per turn is nice. And then Crypt Lord Ring gives us Create Undead. That's why I didn't take it earlier. I'm a big fan of Create Undead. I think it's a really great spell. This allows us to cast and summon up a mummy from a dead body, and it doesn't require level 6 spell slot, which it normally does. So really great ring. If you can get that, get it. The Spell Crux Amulet will give us a spell slot restoration, which is really nice too. This will allow us to cast Chain Lightning 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So we got the 2 here. We got that, I guess 5 times. So with our 1 spell, 2, 3, 4, and then also with the Spell Crux, we get 5 casts of Chain Lightning. That's crazy. But we can also go with the Amulet of Greater Health, which will take our health from 74 up to 122, which makes Gale live a whole lot longer. I think that he's the best recipient for that, so go with it. It'll make him live a lot longer. But we can also give him the Helldusk armor, which will take his armor class up to 24. So that's another really great option because it'll keep him alive a lot longer, and that's exactly what you want for Gale because he is kind of squishy otherwise. So with no spell or with no shield, double staves, this build is completely overpowered. So there it is, the best Gale build guide for Baldur's Gate 3. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, please hit the subscribe button below, and I'll see you all on the next video.